Hello and welcome to another Odd Paintings, where I go from a blank piece of paper to a drawing to a finished acrylic painting about surreal, strange, odd, humorous, sometimes a bit dark artwork. What I should have mentioned in the first video and going forward, these paintings are done over a single session, meaning that the longest I will spend on one of these paintings is about 5 hours. So something you could do in an afternoon. Okay, that being said, the subject of today's video is something that happened to me the other day. I put my back out, so today's artwork is all about having a bad back. So I hope you enjoy the video. If you do enjoy the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And without further ado, I will channel my inner Bob Ross and commentate over the process. There you go. Okay, so where to begin with an image about having a bad back? So as always, shape and movement are most important to me, so I try and get that down first. I have to say, folks, I've been very, very fortunate in my life in that I've never had any problems with my back until, the other day. I just bent down to put a cup of tea on the table and it just went. It was the worst experience ever, and for past couple of days I've been in a fair amount of pain, so anyone who does have a bad back, I very much sympathize with you now. So as I'm working on this, I'm trying to get across the idea of the sharp, jagged pain and the thought in the way I'm doing these sort of sharp shapes, and also the face. I think when you're in agony, you're not pulling an attractive face, so that was something I was pushing for. I think it's also important to note at this point that when I do a drawing, I don't always assume it's going to become a painting. Sometimes it stays as a drawing, in which case I spend a lot more time with it. But once I'd got that face down, I decided, nah, this has to be a painting. I wasn't happy with that hand. I didn't really spot it until I'd finished the drawing, but you'll see that I changed that. So yeah, working on the tone as always after I've got the detail in there. Making sure that I'm clear about what goes where, and like I said, even though that hand is off, I know roughly where it's going to go and how things are going to build up. Quite important from my days as an editorial illustrator. When you're doing things about concepts, I don't put a background into these things. I want the character and the idea to stand through. So the background, you'll see when I do the painting, becomes a little ambiguous. It's more of a colour and a mood rather than a scene, so to speak. I do use the rubber a little bit more on this one just to clean it up at the end there, and it's just some smudges to sort of get the idea across. So we're all happy there. And there's the finished drawing. I saw the hand and decided, no, I don't like that twisted view. So with the painting on the MDF, it's already gessoed, to our old friend working with burnt sienna, getting the basic tones down on the character, trying to keep him as warm as possible at this point because I thought it might be a cold painting. Working in the shadows on the face, so I've got a good base to work on. And there you see I start to fix the hand. I decide those two fingers should be bent. Same again, working in the folds in the clothes and the jeans, and trying to work my way around those vein thorn things. I have to say I tend to do a lot of work like this, less about big things in life, more the minor things that kind of get on my nerves a little bit. Little thing like the bad back is less of a little thing. It was kind of almost crippled me for a couple of days, but there's a lot of things that get on my nerves, and a lot of things that happen in life that I like to put into work. Okay, the thing you've not seen me to do now is I'm putting in a pink background, and the reason I'm doing that is because I know the background is going to be predominantly blue, and I want a kind of a warm colour to peek out from underneath it, and also the sort of painful bits from the thorns I want to really stand out. So I should point out, in between there was a bit of drying time when I put the undercoat down there. I let it dry for about 20 minutes before I came back to work, and you can already see that how much that pink shines through the blue, and it's kind of a nice effect. I kind of like it anyway. It gives it more of that painterly feel. and stops things getting a bit muddy if I start mixing pinks and stuff over the top. I wanted to avoid like a really dark purple, so this was kind of a quick way to do that. So yeah, I spend a reasonable amount of time on the background. I don't really move on with a piece, like with the other piece I did, the battered cod. I work backwards to forwards, so I get the background done first, and then I might go back to it later on, but when I'm reasonably happy with it, or I need to wait for it to dry, I'll move on to something else. And I tend to go for the most important, or what I deem the most important areas first, after the background, which is, in this case, the face, trying to work up that like sort of grotesque kind of biting your lip kind of agony I'm shooting for here. And you can see I've painted him quite green almost, with the idea that I'm going to build those highlights up. And I wasn't happy with those eyes for quite some time. And it took me a while to figure out what I'd done wrong. What you can't actually see is I have the drawing off to one side that I can refer back to, and ultimately what the problem with the face was, I hadn't arched his eyebrow up enough, and you'll see a little later how I very quickly kind of go in and fix it, and I'm quite happy with it then. So again, just slowly building up those highlights as the paint dries. I'm able to add layers on top, and it's still wet enough that I can blend it a little bit more, which is what I love about acrylic paints. It's what frustrates most people about them, is because they dry so fast, but it's something I really enjoy. Just so you know, the drawing this time round I think was around 15 minutes, and the painting, my camera reliably informed me, was just shy of 3 hours. So again, not a huge painting, just a single figure, so about what I would spend if this was an illustration job, an editorial. It's probably the sort of job I would get. Probably wouldn't be this shape. Normally they seem to be squares these days, so yeah, it's probably about the same amount of time I would spend. Depending on the client, it's sometimes the amount of time I get to do the piece, but I haven't had any of those for a little while. Normally I've got quite good deadlines on them these days, but there's been moments in the past where things have been quite taut. So I spent quite a bit of time working on those fleshy bits of the figure, because again, I deem them the most important. I think that's the part that people are going to look at the most. And I decided to differentiate the colour of his face from his arms somewhat, so his arms are quite warm, and I wanted his face to be kind of pale, like he really is in agony, and it's making him kind of ill, because that's how I felt, to be honest with you. So yeah, same sort of thing with the cloth. I wanted there to be a real dark shadow where his arm overlaps over across him. In hindsight being the wonderful thing that it is, I think if I was to do something like this again, I would just paint over the veins and put them in separately later. It caused more hassle than it was worth, I think. But every painting has its own challenges. There's always something you've never painted before, no matter how long you've been doing it for. So you live and you learn. But I'm quite happy with the end result at the end of the day, so it wasn't all bad. And having a bad back sucks. It's kind of awful, but I often think if you can take something kind of bad and turn it into something useful or good, so I've turned it into a painting, I always feel a little bit better about not being able to move for a day and a half. But hopefully I won't have it again, but I know some of you people who suffer from this all the time, you have my sympathies. It truly was awful. Again, I've talked about it before, I'm not going for realism here. I do very stylized figures because I like the sort of creepy, slightly humorous nature I get with them, and obviously this could be interpreted as quite a dark painting, but sometimes life is dark, so I do dark paintings. They're not always happiness and rainbows, so humor is good, but it's good to do a dark painting now and again. This is a painting about being in pain at the end of the day. I was actually quite relieved at the payoff of these spikes, because I'd left them for so long and I wasn't sure they were going to work, and actually I'm quite happy with the way they work in that piece now. And the piece sort of ticks all my boxes, quite stylized, it's painterly, so I'm really quite happy with it in that regard. So yeah, you know, just highlighting them up a little bit, making sure we're all in with it and everything's happy. And then I put my signature on it, and there's the finished piece. Okay, so there you have it. Here's the finished painting, all done. Only thing left to do now is get it all framed up for whatever purpose I decide to use it for. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And as always, if there's any questions about my process, stick them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Okay, cheers folks, and I'll see you next time.